Hi, everyone. Welcome to Dr. MC's Self-Care Cabaret podcast. I'm Teresa Melito-Conners, a doctoral-level educational administrator and mental health practitioner focused on helping you, our world's helpers. Every day, we have a choice to prioritize our well-being, to incorporate reflection, recovery, renewal, and resilience strategies into our lives. However, those of us who step up and serve our communities in healthcare, education, nonprofit spaces, and more can struggle with putting ourselves first. I've seen this firsthand. It's a challenge. Enter Dr. MC's Self-Care Cabaret podcast. Here, we have real, intimate conversations with leading experts passionate about accessible, sustainable self-care in its 10 domains. It's all about the hard work we can take on together to find our spotlight. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to share a little bit about work-life balance statistics and remind you that you are more than your job, and there is more to life than working yourself to the point of it's no longer healthy. So when we look at some work-life balance statistics across the country, it's noted that 48% of Americans consider themselves workaholics, and only 23% of those are financially motivated in doing so. Often we think that there must be a financial component for why folks work themselves as hard as they do, but that's actually not what the statistics show. It's also noted that 91% said that they experience an unmanageable amount of stress in their jobs. Stress will kill you. We need to shift this narrative and begin to prioritize ourselves over anything else. 1 in 3 American adults is sleep deprived. We know that 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated. And over the years, the vacation scores, meaning like folks taking their actual earned paid time off, have plummeted. We have one of the worst vacation scores globally. A study published in 2019 found that an average American used only 10.2 days off. That is not enough, friends. And from 1976 to 2000, the average American took more than 20 days off per year. But since then, the numbers have been rapidly declining to only 16 days in 2015 and then the 10.2 in 2019. It's also noted that those of us that work 55 hours or more per week have a 1.3 times higher chance of having a stroke than those who work standard hours. This is serious. It is time to take control of your health and well-being so you can be the best you possible. Self-care is a choice, and you have a choice. And with that, today I welcome Dr. Gary Lindner to the podcast today. Dr. Gary received his doctorate in physiology and has held faculty positions at major universities. Dr. Gary has over 30 years of business experience and success, from startup ventures to multinational, multi-million-dollar biotechnology companies. Dr. Gary has authored numerous health-related articles and is featured in videos, audio, and publications. Dr. Gary has been a self-care advocate for nearly 25 years and is dedicated to helping people become aware of and make choices toward a healthier life. And here is our conversation. Well, thank you so much for joining us here, Dr. Gary. I'm excited to chat with you more about self-care, our shared passion about self-care, I should say.
Definitely a shared passion. So, and Teresa, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all the good work and your self-care advocacy and information you're giving to everybody. So
thank you so much. I appreciate that. And so right out of the gate, I love to ask my guests, how do you practice self-care?
Well, for me, this actually came about, like it does for many of us, when I was in my mid-40s. And all of a sudden, my health I didn't have the energy I used to have, everything else. So I started, and as a physiologist, I really kind of, I understand how the body works. So I looked at some things and different ways to restructure my life, basically. And I came across a philosophy called the 5 Pillars of Wellness. And it's about having balance in your life, a healthy body, healthy mind, healthy family, healthy society, and healthy finances. And if, and I love the little quote that you did in your last podcast saying, that self-care is more than just bath bombs and a smile. I mean,
absolutely, it is.
I thought that was absolutely great. And then you also mentioned using vision boards. So that's something I adopted as well. And you've probably found out as well as I do. Be careful what you put on those vision boards because they come through. I mean, they really do.
For sure.
So I looked at this philosophy, and I'd never really thought of my life that way. Pretty much went to school, got my doctorate degree, started to teach at different universities, UC Davis for one of them, and then started a company and focused most of my energy there. Even when I got married and had 4 children, most of my energy was focused there. And really what I found, and this is probably when I was about 45 or so, that type of lifestyle was really taking its toll and starting to take its toll on my health. And so I tried to restructure that. So if you look at my vision boards, which I've been doing now for more than 25 years, they are really in these 5 key areas: healthy body, mind, family, society, and finances. And I don't think many of us look at our life that way and creating that type of balance. And it's very important, because if one of those areas are out of balance, all the others are out of balance as well. So, for example, if you're having some health challenges, does that affect your mind? Well, obviously it affects your body. Does it affect your mind? Yeah. What you're thinking? Sure. Does it affect your family? Yeah. Does it affect your ability to contribute to society? Does it affect your finances? Of course. I mean, the largest cause of bankruptcy in the U.S. is medical bills. And so very important to have balance in our life there. I'm an advocate for these 5 areas. And as a physiologist, with my self-care program and my self-care advocacy, I focus a little bit more on physical health, on maintaining a healthy body. And one of the things about our bodies that has always intrigued and amazed me is its ability to regenerate and renew itself. We got 50 trillion cells in our body, and 10 trillion of those make up our physical body. The other 40 are the microbiome in the gut, and things along those lines. But we need to replace 6 billion cells a day. Now, just think of that. That's a pretty daunting task. I mean, we replace our largest organ, our skin, every 27 days. Our entire skeletal system every 10 years. Nervous tissue, our gut lining, our taste buds every 3 or 4 days or 10 days. I mean, very quickly. So our ability to do that, really, from a physiology standpoint, is called homeostasis. And that's our nature. But to do it, we need to provide our body with the tools to do that. So there are 5 key elements that everybody needs. And this is kind of what I focus on, all right, in a very natural way. We need air, right? Yeah, we breathe 23,000 times a day. We can only live 3 minutes without air. We need water, 70% water, and we need to stay hydrated. The issue here is 75% of us walk around chronically dehydrated every day.
That's so crazy, right? It is so simple.
I used to tell my kids, water is not a beverage choice. It's an essential element, right? And essential, and I mean vital. I'm vital for life. We need sleep. And here's an area that most people ignore, and we could do a whole podcast on sleep too in the future.
We definitely
could. I talk a lot with people about that. And it's, and if we look at that, the average American now sleeps a full hour less than it did 50 years ago. We did 50 years ago, about 6.5 hours, not 8 hours like we need. All right. We need food.
Right.
We need to nourish our bodies, right? And, choices
Absolutely.
there, fast food, added sugars to food, you name it. And so we look for natural solutions there as well. And the last thing, and it doesn't get enough attention, I think, is we need the natural energies of the earth, of our Mother Earth. We need the magnetic energy. We need the negative ions of the atmosphere. We need electrons. I mean, maybe you've heard about grounding, or grounding yourself to the earth. I forget who it was that said this, but they said probably the worst invention ever made that affected health was rubber-soled shoes, because it insulates us from that earth. And when we touch our skin to the earth, negative electrons just flow in and act as natural antioxidants. I'll tell you a quick little story. I was meeting with a friend of mine. I hadn't seen him for a couple of years, but I'd known him since like second grade, and we were having dinner in San Francisco. And Will's a very busy guy. He's the CEO of a big national sports stores. And I said, well, when's the last time you actually really, and he lives in Connecticut, travels back and forth to New York. And I said, well, when's the last time you actually, and he's very into health. He's very, he does everything to the max. I mean, the guy will ride 50 miles a day on a bike. I mean, whatever. But I said to him, when's the last time you actually touched the earth with your bare skin? And he looked at me and he said, well, why? I said, well, just answer the question first. And he said, probably when my wife and I were on vacation in Florida 5 years ago. But I mean, but I think that's kind of natural for many people. So there's solutions for all these that we can get these vital elements the way nature intended. And I think, and I'm going to ask you a question. Are they currently in the way nature intended them to be? Is our air the way nature intended it to be? Is our water? No, it's not.
No.
No. Sleep, that's a personal choice, and like I said, we could do a whole podcast on that. So these are our body's pretty amazing, but we need these tools to do that.
For real. Like, we take so much for granted, just all the things it's doing all the time to keep us going.
Absolutely right. And we don't think about many of these things. It's like people, if we look at it this way, well, here's where my passion lies. And I'll just jump right into that if you don't mind. What's our biggest healthcare challenge globally? Actually, it's chronic diseases. Okay.
Oh,
it is.
Okay. Sure.
And I'm sure there's not a person listening to our podcast here that hasn't been affected either personally or with family members or friends.
Sure.
Or whatever.
That's accurate.
I mean, it's our biggest healthcare problem in the U.S. and globally. It's for 50% of all adults have at least chronic disease, and 40% have two or more, and 40% of children. And they're showing up earlier and earlier in our lifetimes. All right.
Yeah.
And so this is the bad news, but I'll get to the good news. Okay.
All right.
So it's So if we look at that, it's responsible for 7 out of 10 deaths. It's the main cause for poor quality of life. And by the time we're 65, 80% of us have one or multiple chronic diseases. All right. And what do we do then? We treat them. And how do we treat them? Usually medication, pharmaceutical
drugs,
intervention. All right.
Right. And
with that, I got a couple figures here just to show. So 6.5 billion. I just looked this up. In 2021, 6.5 billion prescriptions were filled in the U.S. That's 20 per person in our country. All right. Now, we represent 4.4% of the world population, yet we consume 75% of prescription medications. in the U.S. This,
Yikes. No, we're quick to throw drugs at issues and not get to the root cause
absolutely.
of things.
I mean, little personal story. Had a checkup, when was it? A couple months ago. And my primary care physician, you know, and I had some blood tests before, like you usually do. And he said, you know, your cholesterol's a little high. And he started to pull out his little pad. He said, you know, I'd like to prescribe some statin drugs for you. And I just looked at him and said, listen, you know me pretty well. And that's going to be sorry for the pun, a tough pill to swallow for me. All right.
Right.
Have you ever heard of bergamot fruit? And he said, no, I haven't. I said, it's a citrus fruit that grows in Italy and is actually more scientific validation for reducing cholesterol and the levels of harmful cholesterols than there is on statin drugs. So let me try that. And he looked at me like I was from another planet. I mean,
because they don't know. They're not. That's not what they're trained to know about alternative medicines and other healing modalities. This is not the training.
Sure. And so there's lots of choices out there, and you have to admit, our health is really a result of our choices. You know, our daily choices and our ongoing habit or lifestyle choices. You know, so what if? And dream with me here, right? What if?
Okay. I'm a Pisces. I love to dream.
What if, and here's where my passion is and my main mission and goal. All right. What if we can change this? What if we can change to where instead of 80% of us end up with chronic diseases, only 10% of us do? What if we can change it to where instead of 90% of our healthcare dollars spent on treating chronic disease, 90% is spent on prevention and only 10% on treatment. All right.
I dream about this all the time, Dr.
I do too. I do too. And I think there are solutions. You know, so if we look at these 5 vital elements, air, water, sleep, food, and natural energies, they have drastically changed in a relatively short period of time. I mean, hundreds of years. And biologically, do we change very quickly? No, we don't. No, we don't. It takes a long, long time. So maybe it's the condition of these 5 vital elements that are the main contributors to these chronic issues. So what would be the effect of drinking chlorinated water through most of your lifetime for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, breathing unhealthy air? And where's the air most unhealthy? In our homes, in our buildings, where we spend 90% of our time. What would be that effect of getting all those contaminants and those environmental toxins from that air? What would be the effect of only getting 6.5 hours sleep a night for decades?
Yeah.
What would be the effect of too much sugar consumption and too much fast food, you know, everything else? And what would be the effect of constantly shielding ourselves from the natural energies that our bodies need, that they require?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure these are the main causative factors for chronic issues. So here's kind of, I've had the opportunity in my lifetime and in my career to travel pretty much all over the world. And I was having dinner with a physician in Jerusalem. And we had just kind of met each other and befriended each other, decided to have dinner. And he was originally from Ohio, and he was doing a sabbatical in Nairobi in Kenya. And we're having a conversation on health. And I asked him, I said, Dr. Ken, since you've been in Nairobi, and he worked at the hospital there, I said, what are the main health conditions? And he said, same as the U.S. Diabetes, heart disease, cancer, stroke, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, you name it. Anywhere in the world you go where modernization, urbanization, all right, industrialization has taken place, chronic disease follows. And I think it is all related to environmental toxins. So when we're drinking water that has chemicals in it we don't want, chlorine and associated others, volatile organic compounds, what's that effect? That effect is going to end up in some type of chronic issue in any one of those categories. Well, my focus is to provide these the way nature intended. My gosh, filter your water, all right? And not only the water you drink, but the water you bathe in. You know, one of the main causes for chloroform in homes are showers and bathing in hot water, where it turns into a gas, and that's from the EPA. You know, so get a good night's sleep and make it a priority.
I never sacrifice
sleep either.
No, that's like the number one thing. And it's always cracks me up whenever I present. When I get to like the rest domain, I always say to folks, you know, do you know you're supposed to feel rested and restored when you wake up in the morning? The looks that I get are just my favorite part. Well, like they're horrified at the possibility.
Wake up in the morning like you did when you were a kid. And the way I relate it, waking up on Saturday morning and can't wait to get to the baseball field. I mean, you know, just full of energy and ready to go. And that can be accomplished. And there's technology out there. So here's what I like to say. If we enjoy, and I think we all enjoy the benefits of modern living, we enjoy indoor plumbing, right? We enjoy
absolutely
air conditioning and we enjoy heating, central heat. You know, we enjoy the internet and all the Wi-Fi and all
that comes with it.
Electronic smog we're surrounded by every day. All right. If we enjoy all these things, which we do, then we really need to use technology to counteract these effects or these side effects of technology. And there's a way to do that. And the term is biomimicry. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's a relatively new term, came to my attention maybe 10 years ago, but was made popular in the 1980s. And what it is using science and technology to replicate nature. And so that's my advocacy, is do that. And that really translates into an excellent self-care or prevention-focused healthcare system for yourself. Does that make sense?
Cool. And so how would you get started with something like that?
Get a hold of me. So that's,
fair.
I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years, and it's and there are things out there that people can utilize and do that. I mean, there are lots of different types of water filters, but there are others that are better than others. I mean, same things with air filters, and you know.
Did you hear the news about our exciting new offering from the Self-Care Cabaret? We're calling it Talkback. If you're familiar with the theater space, you may have participated in a talkback before. After a performance, the cast and crew will come back on stage to chat with the audience and answer questions. Think of it as a casual, guided discussion. Inspired by this and by popular interest, we've come up with a talkback for the Self-Care Cabaret podcast. Groups will listen to a podcast episode or two of their choosing, then I'll come and lead your discussion either in person or virtually of those episodes, expanding on the big ideas. It's a great option for groups looking for short, impactful professional development, or smaller teams looking to get an introduction to self-care and well-being. We have done a few of these so far, and let me say, they have been so much fun. So if you're interested in bringing a talkback to your group or organization, email podcast@drmcselfcare.com. And now, on with the show.
You know, as far as diet or food, I think we all need to come to the realization that we need to supplement, right? We just can't. I don't think we can physically eat enough food each day to provide our body with the nutrients it needs. I mean,
Well, a lot of food these days is stripped from, like, depending upon what you eat. And I know we talked a little bit about this via email before the interview, but I do subscribe to an ideal given my lived experience about no bad foods. And what I mean, that doesn't mean that you eat Twinkies and whatever all day long. But what that means is that when you label food as good or bad, you tend to give it power. And when you give something power, what do you want?
Right.
More of it. And then you deprive yourself of it and restrict yourself of it. And then you get into like a whole other thing, which is not what we're going to talk about today. But what I strive to help folks with is to get in touch with, like, yeah, eat the Twinkie, but how did that make you feel? Do you feel as good in your body after you eat something super processed, or does it make you just feel kind of yucky or heavy? Like, getting in touch with how different foods make you feel and satisfaction level and just general, getting in touch with those natural kind of hunger and fullness cues that your body will give you if you're willing to listen to it, which, but sometimes, like, it's okay. But food politics is like a whole thing that makes me insane.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And what we've done to food.
Well, let's take 80% of items you find in a grocery store have added sugar.
Right. Things that shouldn't have sugar. One of the funniest stories, this was a couple years ago. I was so proud of myself. I had bought pickled beets in this cute little jar, and I think I even got them at like Whole Foods or whatever, and I was putting them on salads, and I mentioned it to my mom, I love beets, but beets can kind of, you cook them and then the kitchen looks like a crime scene afterwards, so it's not necessarily something easy to prepare. So I was pumped to find these pickled beets, and so I mentioned it to my mom, and she's like, check the ingredients, make sure there's not, and like I laughed at her, I'm like, Mom, it's pickled beets, and she's like, just check the ingredients. Sure enough, high fructose corn syrup added to it. I nearly went through the roof.
But I mean, that's a great example, but do it just about, 50% of breakfast cereals for kids, 50% of it's added sugar. I mean, so here's a couple statistics on that. 200 years ago, the average American consumed 9 grams of sugar a day. Currently, it's 153 grams. And why do we have an epidemic of type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetics?
Yeah.
I mean, our body wasn't meant to process or take care of that much sugar. I mean, and people don't even know they're really getting it. So you hit the nail on the head. Check labels and check labels and check labels.
Yeah. But also, though, check in with yourself. Like, I think that's really important. Like, to see, like, I always think about, I don't deprive myself of something. If I want something sweet or whatever, like, I'll have it because I know what happens when I've done the restriction path, and that wasn't good. So now, I will honor myself, honor my hunger and allow myself to have it. But then sometimes afterwards, I'm like, oh, like, I don't feel good after eating that, and having that awareness. So then, maybe next time, maybe I do choose the same food again. Maybe I don't, and that constant checking in with yourself. Cause I do feel too, like, we're just disconnected from our bodies. We're running around, we're doing all the things, and we're not taking the time. And I think you kind of said in the beginning, you didn't really get into self-care till a little bit later in life, when you were kind of recognizing your own aging, and that things weren't doing what you wanted them to do as they maybe had been doing 10 years prior.
We aren't
I really
bulletproof
hope
anymore.
Right. And I hope, that's a very common story. And when I was doing my dissertation research and interviewing folks, that was very common. Well, I didn't really start caring about self-care and my health until I was faced with a health issue, or until something happened, or until I was forced to, essentially. And I hope, and part of my work is to get younger generations and kids to start, paying attention to this stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things I advocate for, too, is creating a wellness home. And again, that is providing the healthiest environment you can for you and your family. And many times people call this like a greenhouse for humans. Yes, it's a nice analogy. So we talk about air purification in the home. We talk about water filtration. We talk about getting a good night's sleep. And at the same time, staying well hydrated with healthy water. We talk about food choices and reducing that sugar.
Do you get into the certain cleaning chemicals and different products that you use with that?
Yes, we do. Yeah. especially and furniture. And if we can find ones that don't off gas, natural type, organic, made type furniture, things along those lines. But the main ones are really the air, the water, sleep, paying attention to our choices for food, and getting some of the natural energies of the earth and the sun. And there's
people underestimate the healing power of just a walk outside, a quick standing down at the beach. I mean, we're here. I know you're in California. We're here on the East Coast in Massachusetts, and we're very close to the beach where I live, and like it can just be so healing to just go down there, put your feet in the sand, walk around a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're basically grounding. You're connecting to Mother Earth. All those negative electrons are going in there, acting as antioxidants to neutralize oxidative species and reduce inflammation. So those are the things I talk to people about. And many times I'll start with a questionnaire and asking them, how much water do you drink a day? What type of water do you drink? Many times I get bottled water. It's their choice. Not a healthy choice. The plastic, the BPA's, the microplastics. Somebody who drinks bottled water throughout the day, they estimate they will ingest enough plastic to equal a credit card in 30 days. And that doesn't belong in our body. I see the need for bottled water for emergency situations, all right, where the water sources in that area have been contaminated or, whatever. But for daily consumption, I'm not a big advocate for health, and I'm not a big advocate for bottled water for the health of our planet. I mean, yeah. So
do you carry around, like I assume when you go different places, you probably bring water with you?
With me. I have what I call a sport bottle that has a filter in it. It actually filters out any contaminants from any municipal source. It's great in airports when you're flying. Saves tons of money. You aren't spending $5 for a bottle of water. But I mean,
is it metal?
No,
what is it?
It's made of a special polymer that doesn't have BPA's or anything else, and it's actually degrades. Cool. I mean, if you're ever to get rid of it in a landfill, it turns into dirt in 6 months. So there are products out there, and there are choices. These are choices for people. That one sport bottle. If I were a bottled water, single-use bottled water drinker, I would save 1,500 bottles a year. That 80% of those end up in our landfill or ocean. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing people don't understand too, I talk a lot about hydration and different techniques for hydration, and like when you're properly hydrated, you feel better. You actually feel I find for myself, I feel more grounded and more present and just in my body. And I didn't even realize this until it was relatively recently. My acupuncturist noted that I was a little dehydrated one of the days, and I try to stay hydrated, so I was a little taken aback that she said that. And then I kind of thought back and was like, I have been lacking a little bit in my water intake. So I took some steps to correct that, and just then really paid attention to how much better I feel when I'm properly hydrated.
And, headaches, 90% of them result in dehydration.
Absolutely.
Most joint problems, so you can list chronic issue after chronic issue that's a result of chronic dehydration.
So why do you think, like, some of these things, like getting sleep, eating, they seem somewhat obvious, but we know that people don't do it. Why do you think that is? Why is this so hard for people to prioritize their self-care?
Well, again, and you kind of hit the nail on the head. Very simple things, but we don't pay much attention to them. We don't pay near enough attention to them. So I'll give a good example. I have another friend of mine, a couple years younger than me, but very fit, very buff, right? And we were talking, and I asked him, I said, Ken, how do you stay in such great shape? He goes, Gary, I get up at 4:30 in the morning so I can spend 2 hours in the gym every morning, and that's my routine. And I asked him, I said, so how much do you sleep each night? He goes, about 4.5 hours. And I said,
yikes.
But you know, I said, Ken, you need 8 hours sleep. And he says, I can't fit my gym time in. And I said, I'd like you to read a book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, and take a look at that. And I said, but you know, maybe you're fit today and feeling pretty good, but come talk to me in 10 years after 4.5 hours of sleep each night.
Oh God, that's brutal. I'm a nightmare if I don't get my 8 hours.
You know, and William C. Dement said that sleep is the most important determinant for health and longevity, more important than diet, exercise, or nutrition. So again, there's a very simple thing. So my solution with many people for sleep is to, and I really think this is a major causative factor of health issues is lack of sleep or poor quality sleep. The schedule it just like you would anything else. All right. And
love it.
Just prioritize it, schedule it, create a routine, and do the same thing with many of your other self-care programs or aspects of it. I constantly have water with me. People tell me, I just can't drink that much water, you know, and I advocate to drink half your body weight in ounces per day. And that's, a couple of liters for most people, but that's what our body needs. And many people, after adopting that self-care part of their program to stay hydrated, we'll do a follow-up call or a Zoom, and they go, I don't get headaches anymore. My joints feel better. I'm actually
amazing.
I actually have more energy. I mean, it is amazing. But again, that's just giving your body what it needs to do what it wants to do,
right,
which is to repair and heal itself. And if we give it the tools to do that, like I said, it's pretty darn amazing. So,
yeah, no, for sure. And I'm always telling people, you have to listen to your body. And there's a great quote. If you listen to your body when it whispers, you won't have to hear it scream. And then I love what you always say too, that hopefully I don't butcher it, but the healthy by choice, not by chance.
Yeah. Be healthy by choice.
And I think
not
that's
chance. Because if we leave our health to chance, as we discussed, chances aren't very good we're going to be healthy. I mean, 80% of us will end up with chronic issues. That will severely affect, in many cases, severely affect our lives and everybody else around us.
Yeah. My goodness. Well, you've given us so much to think about, Dr. Gary. I really appreciate it. And I know our work is very aligned in what we talk about and what we kind of hope to instill in other people and get them to really take this seriously, because this is serious stuff. It should be number one.
Because without our health, what do we got?
Nothing. You got nothing. So how can folks find you if folks want to connect with you?
Well, we have an informational site that I think you're aware of called the selfcarehub.com. So we talk about air matters, water matters, sleep matters, food matters, energy matters. We have a number of videos there. All my contact information's on there too, under the contact link. So it's just all one word, selfcarehub.com. Or on any of the social media platforms or Facebook, you can find me, Gary Lindner, Lindner.
Awesome. We'll make sure that's all linked in the episode notes as well. And you've mentioned a couple other resources, different books and stuff. We'll try to get those linked in the episode notes as well.
Excellent. So, or they can email me, Gary@selfcarehub.com. Yeah.
Cool. The Self-Care Hub. I love it. We got the Self-Care Hub and the Self-Care Cabaret. I don't know. Dr. MC and Dr. Gary could just take this over nationwide, globally.
Well, like I said, I
Awesome.
think
Well,
we really can have a big impact on people. And I applaud the work you're doing, Teresa. It's wonderful. So.
Thank you. And likewise, because it is important and we need more people that preach this stuff and help people to really understand the importance of it. And less of that other stuff, less of the nonsense and the noise that's out there. But thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It was great to connect with you and for our listeners to hear you and to learn.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Dr. Gary gave us so much to think about from his perspective and experience. I invite you to consider your own lived experiences in thinking about the choices you're making and how they may be impacting your health and well-being. And you may want to consider what small changes or shifts you can make that can have a big influence on your well-being. There are many things you can do that are quick, easy, and free that over time will have you just feeling better and healthier and happier. What's better than that? And when it comes to feeding ourselves, folks who have been listening to me for a while know that this is an area I struggle with. I'm in recovery for multiple eating disorders, and I credit my recovery to working with a talented eating disorder dietitian and learning about intuitive eating, mindful eating, and rejecting diet culture. So I want to reiterate that there are no bad foods. You do not need to stress out over food labels and sugar levels and such. Instead, I invite you to move back into your body and trust your body. See if you can get in touch with your hunger and fullness cues and just all the sensations that occur from the beginning to the end of a meal and even the sensations throughout. Get curious about those emotions and sensations and feelings that come up around eating. How do certain foods make you feel? Get curious. See if you can make some adjustments. I'm going to strongly recommend that this is an area you struggle with, that you go and listen to my podcast episode on mindful eating. It's a bite-sized pod, so it's short, and I will link it in the episode notes, as well as some other resources you should check out. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you're feeling more energized and empowered. And if you liked what you heard today, subscribe and leave a review for this podcast on your preferred player. Also, in honor of my birthday month and recent birthday milestone, we are releasing bonus content during the off weeks. So we'll see you next week for more exciting Dr. MC content. Follow along on Facebook and Instagram at Dr. MC Self-Care and Dr. MC's Self-Care Cabaret on LinkedIn. You can also visit my website, drmcselfcare.com, for the latest updates and to sign up for the Cast Party, my e-newsletter. And if you're interested in having me present to an audience near you, email info@drmcselfcare.com. Thanks again, stay well, and do good.